welcome. In this episode, I will hook up my Charge Amp EV charger to the Magic Mirror. I'm monitoring my charging and my total consumption and things like that. So welcome and hope you enjoy. So let's first take a look at the API. You can find the API specification at Swagger. And it does the first look, it looks quite good, but there are some major problems with it, and we'll try to explain why. First of all, you can actually get it to send back events to your application automatically. You have to contact the support to do that, but I don't really see any point in it because it doesn't give you anything more than the same things that you can poll. So in my case, it's not really applicable, but it's possible to get callback hooks, webhooks back into your application if you want, contacting the support. And also to get the first API key to be able to use the APIs, you also need to contact their support. And they are quite slow at responding, so it can take some time before you receive the codes, but then it works. So if we have a look at the different APIs, logging in is nothing strange, that works fine. And then there are some data which if you have an organization with many users and things like that, you can set that up and retrieve and update information about that, and also for partners. But if we take a look at the main part here, the charge point, then we have certain APIs here, and if we start with the most obvious one, is to retrieve the status. We have it down here. And the response we get back here is fairly limited, but I would say the biggest problem here is that it will tell you what's going on. And at first glance, it looks like it also gives you the total consumption in kilowatt hours. This is actually not true. This is just for the ongoing session. So there's really no meter value here. There's no way for you to keep track of your total consumption. The only way to do that is to actually read each of the sessions that you create. I will show you how to do that later. And this is a real big pain to work with this API. And also a session starts basically when you plug in your car. But you have no way of distinguishing when it actually start charging, because in my case, I have a schedule saying that it should only start at in the night and charge the car in the night. But my session will start at when I plug in the car in the evening, and it will end when I unplug the car. And there's no really good way for me to see when it actually starts charging without monitoring all the time, of course. And then I can have a look at the actual sessions, but I will come back to that. So quite a few drawbacks here already when we first look at the API. You can enable the callbacks if you want the webhooks. You can get some different informations about your settings, and you can also change some settings. It's very, very limited. And then the next thing here is that, well, we can actually retrieve your schedules, or so you think. But this is actually not the case, because if you create the schedule in your phone app, it doesn't show up here. So it seems like it's different users or something. So if you want the schedules to show up here in the API, you will also have to create them through the API. It's not a big issue because you can do that, of course, but then you will not see them in your phone, and you can't change them in your phone. So this is also quite messy to try and work with schedules here. So the only really useful thing here is to read the actual sessions. And in my case, I will retrieve all the sessions and then use them to calculate the consumption. But even if we look at the session values, there are also some big problems. As I said, the start time and the end time will be when actually you plug it in and when you unplug it. There's no really a good way for you to see when it actually starts charging. And why is that important? Well, it's important if you want to track the cost. Because if I plug in the car in the evening, the kilowatt hour price is much higher than when it actually starts. So if I want to calculate how much the charge actually costs, I need to know when it starts charging. And I will keep track of that in the Magic Mirror, but it would be much easier if that was clear in the APIs, and it would be much easier to retrieve and store that information. And here you can see the total consumption in kilowatt hours, and that's again just for that session. So the APIs would need some enhancements as I see it, but we have to try and work what we have. And next I will show you how I have handled this in my Magic Mirror setup. So I prepared my Python project here for the Magic Mirror. And if you want to know more about how I set up my Magic Mirror and the different items and so how it's constructed, you can go back to one of the earliest videos and then I will explain how it's set up. In this video I will just go through the charge amp functionality. So for this I created a new class with the function update. So the first part here is just to set the different variables that I will need. And then if we have a look at the actual update function, it's only polling the charge amp site for data every 30 seconds or something, whatever you like. And I'm also authenticating every time. I know that I could do this probably refresh token and so on, but in this example, I will just authenticate, and that's the first part here. And after that, I will retrieve with the get function the status of my charge point information. And in that information, it's fairly limited. If we have a quick look in Postman, we can see the call here, status, and the result. So I will get my total consumption, which is only for this session. It's not a counter for the total consumption. So it's only in this session. I have the status that I will also be needing. And I have the start time and end time and the session ID. So those things I will use in different areas here. You also have an overall status here online. So let's see how we can use this. I get the status, save it. I get the total consumption and save it as well. I usually multiply with 1,000, so I get it in watt hours instead of kilowatt hours. So I will format that differently depending on what I want to show later on. And then since the total consumption is for each session, I have to do some special tricks here because I still want to split it out so I get the correct consumption by hour. But the next day I will probably have a new session and then I need to reset the last hour consumption and so on. So there are some things that I need to do to keep track of the hourly consumption because I want to be able to see the cost for it, and then I need a specific consumption per hour. So that's all for the first part where I'm actually just retrieving the status. But then I have added one more thing because if I miss something here If I have problems or I'm doing some new development or something and I miss a charge session, it will be lost to me. Since the total consumption is for per session, I don't have a counter that I can keep track of for my monthly consumption, yearly consumption, and so on. So for that reason, I've added this part down here, which will retrieve. The first part here is retrieving all sessions for the last 4 days. And then I'm looking through those sessions and see if I have all of them, if I have missed any of the sessions. And if I have missed any one of them, I'm updating the SQL database. It's a MySQL database which keeps the log information. So I will find any lost sessions, so to say, and I will add them to the log database. And again, here I have a bit of a problem, because if we look at Postman again, you can see that whenever I retrieve a session, I have the start time, but this is actually not the start time of the charging. This is the start time when I plug it in. So I don't really know when the session actually started. So this example here, it starts at 5 o'clock in the evening, but nothing is going on there. And it ends at 6 o'clock and the next day, and nothing's going on there. So this whole consumption here has happened some time between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, because that's what my schedule says. And there's really no way for me to see this here. And I can't even retrieve the schedules, because when I retrieve the schedules, it's for this type of call, for the API calls. I don't see the ones that I put into my app. That's really stupid. So, but to get around that problem, I have a built-in the code that I know my schedules, and I know that they start at a certain time and that they end at a certain time. So I will actually try and figure out when did this actually happen. It's supposed to start at 1 o'clock in the night, and then I split it out, and I know that it's probably 11 kilowatts an hour. So this is a bit of a guesswork, but it's the best I can do. And really, it's not a big problem, because this should never happen. It's only if I miss the session that I will run into this scenario. So for me, that's good enough. And down here, I'm updating the database with this information. And I'm also saving the session ID, of course, because that's the way that I can keep track of if I have updated that session or not. If the session is there and it has been added the correct way, I will not change it. I will not update it. So that's the functionality. And now we need to start this. And then we go down to this section. You can see that I'm setting the variables here in my class, assigning the class, setting the variables. So this will also work if you have several chargers, and you can just have use the class again. I need the API key. I need my login information for the charge amp site, and I need the charger ID. And then I will start the thread here. So I'm starting the thread, and if you have seen my earlier videos, I'm doing it a bit differently now. I'm just starting the thread, and then I'm having an endless loop in my function instead. As you can see up here, it will just continue and run on forever, and it has a delay down here instead. So I've changed that setup a bit. So now it's up and running. The code is running, but we will want to send it back to my web page as well. So let's find that part. First part here is for debugging. It's an index page that shows all the values available. So I will uncomment that. And the second part here is for the actual main page of the Magic Mirror. And here you can see I'm sending back the consumption, the status, and I've also calculated the monthly consumption and monthly cost. And if you want to know more about how I'm doing this and how I'm logging the data and so on, again, go back to an earlier video and you will see how I'm doing the logging. It's not really that complicated. I'm storing it in the SQL database and then I'm retrieving it by month, by year, by day, and calculating the cost. So it's quite straightforward from an SQL point of view. So that's that. So let's start it and see if it runs. But first, let's have a quick look at the HTML page. This is really simple. I'm just going to write a single line on my Magic Mirror telling the status of the charger. I'm also looking at the consumption for the ongoing or latest session. So in the morning I will see that, okay, this night I charged 20 kilowatt hours. See that everything works. And then I will also show the monthly consumption and monthly cost. So it will just be a single line on the page. So it's running. And down here we can see that it's updating. Suspended EVSE, that means that it's not charging at this point, but it's waiting and it's possible to charge. But it's suspending due to the schedule or to the limit in the car. I typically charge my car to 80%. And here I can see 22.3 kilowatts for the last session. And I have the total this month. And I have the cost in SEK calculated based on the hour rates from my power company. This is quite useful. I've been using it for this for some time, and it tells me what I need to know.